Hannah Muller. And Hannah, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for joining me this morning. I know Fridays can be really busy. So,
Exactly. I was glad you said yes, but you have something to tell us about. Show us what you've got there, hot off the press.
this is my new book, Designing with Dried Flowers. It comes out in a couple of weeks, and yeah, I got the first copy in my hands a month ago, and I'm just like so over the moon with the whole process and the book, and I'm just so excited to talk about it
Oh,
today.
good. Well, we have I have a little PowerPoint with some of the images from the farm, and I'm going to pop those up on the screen. But first, tell us where Full Belly Farm is and who you farm with and how long you've been farming. Some people may know your backstory, but I'd love to share it.
Yeah, so I grew up at Full Belly Farm, which is in Northern California. We're kind of about 45 minutes west of Sacramento in this little valley called the Cafe Valley. It's a beautiful spot. It's home to about 80 different organic farms, mostly family run. And my parents started Full Belly Farm about 40 years ago. And I'm the youngest of four, and I grew up very free range at the farm, just exploring the flower fields, my mom's garden, and I think I have sort of always loved flowers from a very, very young age. I went away to college at the University of Oregon and fell in love with the student farm there. And actually, during my time at the student farm, I picked up a book called A 50-Mile Bouquet.
Oh, right.
And that it was sort of my reintroduction to slow flowers and growing flowers. And I decided I wanted to be a florist. So I moved back after college and started designing for weddings and events using our flowers that we grew at Full Belly Farm. For weddings primarily in the Northern California area and our valley, and at our farm as well. And I also
Wow.
sort of started the designing with dried flowers at that time. And we have always dried flowers for the last 40 years. And I'll get a little bit more into the history of that. But we've sort of been ramping that up in production for the last 10 years as well.
Oh my gosh. You also you had your own marriage take place at Full Belly Farm, right? A couple of
Yeah,
years
two
ago?
years ago, out in the middle of the flower fields. It was sort of the most beautiful moment of my life, definitely.
Oh my gosh, your whole everything comes full circle for you with your origin. What did you go to college for? Were you thinking about going completely in a different direction than agriculture?
Yeah, I mean, I think that as a teen growing up on the farm, there was definitely that angsty teen years where I wanted nothing to do with Full Belly. I wanted nothing to do with the farm. But as soon as I went away to college, I studied sociology and anthropology. Definitely nothing to do with agriculture, but I was very involved with the student farm at the University of Oregon for all 4 years, and it really, I think, reconnected me with agriculture in a way that I realized that farming and flower growing can look like so many different things, right? We were doing it on a pretty large scale and in a very specific way, but just seeing how folks were doing it in a different way really helped me to want to reconnect with the flowers that we grew at our farm.
Right. And flowers are a part of Full Belly, but certainly the majority of is it correct to say the majority of the crops are edible crops?
Yeah, we grow about 450 acres of fruits, vegetables, nuts, animals, and we have about 15 acres of cut flowers. It wasn't always that way. My mom started off growing on about a half an acre in the back of her garden, and then has slowly expanded over the years as we have figured out what grows well, what dries well, what folks like and enjoy. We sell primarily to the Bay Area, so and have been going to the same farmers markets for almost all 40 years. So
Wow.
we have a
That's
really
amazing.
loyal customer base in that area.
Half an acre to 15 acres is kind of maximum growth.
Yeah. Well, it's just good to remember that it's been 40 years in the making. So it wasn't from year one to year two leap. It was over the course of 40 years.
Right, organic growth, as they say. Well,
Exactly.
let me pop up the PowerPoint.
Yeah, that looks great.
Okay, great. So close up of the cover and talk about what this space is, Hannah. I'm so intrigued by it.
Yeah, this is our wreath room, which it got the name, I think, probably about 30 years ago. My mom and her friends decided to dry some flowers and take a wreath making class, and that sort of spurred their love for dried flowers. So this is the room where we dry all of our flowers. It sort of started off as it's an old mechanic shed, so it's very funky, very worn down. But we just have hung wires across the beams on the top. And then we rubber band all of our bunches to those wires. And then because we're in such a hot location, those flowers dry within, a week or 2 weeks. And then we take them down and store them into boxes. So this was the summer shoot. So I have in the book, I have or opening shot of each season in the wreath room, that sort of talks about all of the different flowers we grow during that season and harvest, and drying techniques and tips for all of those flowers.
I noticed that, like, this massive horizontal 2-page spread with that ceiling filled with dried flowers. But if you look closely, you really tell the seasonal changes, right?
Exactly. And the wreath room totally changes throughout the season. And it was so fun to try to capture that, not only with like the flowers that are hanging, but also the light coming through, and just, sort of, this was a bit of that, like trying to capture that busyness and the chaos of the summer. So it was really fun to work with Molly, who's the photographer for the book, to try to sort of capture those moments and the yellow and the bright contrasting colors that come along with the summer.
Wow. It seems so high. Are you using like some kind of long pole to get the bunches up and down, or do you have a step stool?
Step ladder, yeah, it's actually one that, like, if you go to Home Depot, they often use. It's got wheels, and it's a little 2-story step ladder.
Yep.
And that it's perfect because you can actually put a box of flowers on top of it so that you can hang them really easily, because that was definitely the tricky part, before we had that, is sort of taking down and replacing those flowers. But you have to have them high, or else it gets really hard to walk in there. Molly, the photographer, is a lot taller than me, and her head was just filled with flower seeds and flowers at the end of the shoots always.
Oh, that's fun. All right. So let's see if we can get the next image. Oh, I had to get your partner in crime in here, your partner in
Yeah.
flowers.
Yeah, so that's my mom, Dru. This story and this book was really just a love letter to her, really. And a lot of this story is her story, because she was the one who started the farm. She was the one who raised me to be in love with flowers. So I really wanted to give credit where credit was due. And so I talk about her story and sort of how she found her way to flowers as well, and how she grew Full Belly Farm. And she was a little shy to be in the book, so we have one amazing photo of me and her together at the beginning of the book, but she was very shy about wanting to be in the rest of the book. But we've got some beautiful photos of the crew, our flower crew that works with us every day as well.
And what about the shot on the left? Is that from one of the styled shoots?
It is. So that is a really fun, it's called the Flower Fairy sort of table arrangement, and it was a little bit of an homage to me growing up and making these really whimsical designs out in my mom's garden. And so I use garden roses and fresh flowers, and so it's talking about how to incorporate dried flowers in with fresh flowers.
I mean, who doesn't want to be there and have, a brunch with you? I think this is just one of those massive field shots that we all want to dive into.
Yeah, 15 acres of flowers is it's a lot of flowers. I mean, we definitely have some stuff that goes by. A lot of the things that we grow, we dry. So we grow things specifically for drying, and then also things that we have excess of, we will dry as well. But the tall larkspur in the back, most of that we use for drying, and it's always such a fun experiment to figure out what dries well and what doesn't dry well. And 40 years later, we're still trying and drying new things.
So what do we see here in the background? The tall
calendula and bachelor buttons, and then there's nigella, and then there is larkspur in the back.
Love it. Love it. I guess this is maybe another one of the seasons that you capture, right?
Yeah, this is actually, I'll show you where it is in the book. I really wanted to sort of capture it's the first page in the book.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and it is a really amazing little opener. And it definitely, this was actually our first shoot that Molly and I shot together, and just sort of encapsulates how beautiful and sort of cathedral like the wreath room can be in different seasons. And I mean, it is definitely my church. It's where I
Oh,
go and just feel at ease and at home.
and there's that ladder you had mentioned. I forgot that this was actually
Exactly.
in the
Yeah.
book. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so everyone needs to know and what supplies are essential for hanging your wreath, your bunches.
Yeah, so rubber bands are one of the things that we use. So we use baling wire, 14 gauge baling wire for the wires on top. And then we use rubber bands to attach all of our flowers. So we'll use one rubber band to go around the base of the flower. And then we use another rubber band to go over the wire and back onto the bunch itself. And then that's easy to pull down. And that's just how we hang all of our flowers.
Mm.
And so those are really the only things that you need. I mean, if you're trying to do this at a large scale, you could do the 14 gauge baling wire, but also we found that clothes drying racks are wonderful if you're doing this at home and might not have as much space.
Yeah. What's your puppy's name?
That's Zeus. And he made his star appearance. He's just the sweetest, and he was just around here at some point. Yeah.
He's looking at you. Yeah, yeah, let's have a day of playing with flowers.
He's definitely the star of the show.
I love it. Okay, this is just a nice detail. I mean, I was obviously selected the horizontals when I could because I knew they'd fill the screen, but
Yeah.
you were talking about the diversity of what you dry. So this is kind of a nice example of that.
Yeah, and the book, I really wanted to capture all of the amazing colors that you can get with drying. I think that dried flowers have a tendency of coming off as, bleached, or there's this whole sort of bleached movement right now, and
Mhm.
sun-dried movement. And I wanted to show all of the amazing rich colors that you can get from dried flowers. So you see globe amaranth and celosias, and actually some ranunculus there that we dry. And so this was a nice little close up of some of those amazing textures and colors that you can get from
Wow.
flowers as well.
That's so funny. I was going to guess that those were peonies or roses, but that's a gorgeous dried ranunculus.
Yeah, ranunculus actually surprisingly dry really well. They fade quicker than a lot of other flowers. So if you're planning on using them in your wreaths, just know that they'll sort of start to begin to fade. I mean, they keep a nice warm tone, but they definitely will start to antique in color.
Okay, here's just a little collage of everything that popped off the screen when I was looking through the files. We can sort of emphasize what you just talked about.
Yeah, so those warm, rich tones again. And then Molly, I wanted to sort of make this book a little bit darker and moodier because the wreath room, that, one of the main components to drying flowers is you don't want an overexposed bright room, because as dark as you can keep it, the light will actually start to begin to fade the flowers. So we
Mm,
try to keep the wreath room pretty dark, and so that I wanted to capture that in the photos as well. So that's what you see on the I don't know what side. I think it's the
yeah.
left hand side is the dried celosias and amaranths. We grow a lot of different dried amaranths for drying specifically. So plumes and globe amaranth and coxcomb. And then in the center, I was just talking about, that sort of bleached look that's really popular. I did want to sort of give an homage to that and talk about how you can get those same sort of colors, but naturally without using bleaches or preservatives. So this is
Right.
a naturally neutral mini wreath set that I did, that are all things that just are beautifully bleached just in their own way.
I think that's a great message to get across in the book because many people who buy this book are probably first time experimenters with dried flowers and they've seen all that boho bleached stuff, pampas grass and everything else, and they just don't know.
Yeah, exactly. So I talk a little bit about all you need is sunlight and time. So things that we want to get to a bleach state will actually dry in our greenhouse or in a different zone that's a little bit sunnier, and you can get that same sort of look.
Love it. Okay, should we go on to the next slide?
Yeah.
I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I just love these little snapshots of how you work with a photographer to create a story, a narrative about your life.
Yeah, and the first opening section of the book is really about how to. So, I dive into if you're picking up flowers from your grocery store, how you would dry those at home. If you are, gardening or farming, the best ways that you can bring those flowers in and harvest and drying techniques. And then it was really fun to go over all the tools and supplies that you'll need, and then and sort of demonstrate how we take something from out in the field to the full process of being dried at home.
And then on the right, that's like a overview shot of a tablescape, it looks like.
Can you believe that all of those are dried flowers? So those are just some of the amazing colors that you can get. Some yarrow and larkspur and some I think Crispidia and actually some anemones, which are something fun that we're trying to dry as well.
Wow. Oh, okay. That's great. Here's more of your techniques that you did a couple garlands, I believe, in the book, and then you show people also how to make I think on the left, that's a wreath assembly, right?
Yeah, so our farm is really well known for our wreaths and for our very full, thick wreaths. And so I do go over, I have a couple page spread on how to make those wreaths at home, and all of the tools and techniques that you would need. And then I go over, there's probably, I don't know, 20 different wreaths for inspiration and guidance on how you can make some at home. And then that on the right-hand side is a really fun Crispidia garland that I just fell in love with. So some way that you can kind of bring a bit of that whimsical Crispidia circular ball into your home and hang them above your bed or in your house.
You have marigold garlands too, I think, in the book, right?
Yes, yeah,
Okay,
yes, I do.
fun. Hannah on location.
It was such a fun, I mean, we shot for 2 years. So it was we shot in all different elements and all of different seasons. So these were a few windy days. That middle one was hilarious, trying to shoot wreaths on one of like the most gusty days at the farm, of course.
Yeah.
But
You can't even see your face.
I know, I love it. It was so fun to try to capture the farm in different seasons and the flowers that we're growing to dry in the different seasons as well. And Molly again just hit it out of the park with all of the flowers and all of the photos that she took.
Right. What's that crop on the left when you have a sweater there with the kind of copper
It's
colored?
actually Sweet Annie. So we dry a lot of Sweet Annie, and that was it had been hit by a light frost, and it turned the most magnificent, like almost smoke bush golden brown, and it was beautiful. And so we dried a lot of it at that color. And it was just so pretty, and I love that photo. Actually, it's one of my favorites.
Well, it kind of illustrates that like something that could be a crisis, you turned it around and we're like, okay, we're going to try this and see what happens.
There's a lot of that at our farm. Turning crisis into dried flowers.
I love the fact that you had mentioned the drying rack alternative. Is that the structure on the right?
Yeah, that's one of them. So that was actually, if you can believe it, an old quilt rack that has been transformed into a drying rack. And so we shot a lot of our introduction to the ingredients on that, which was really, really fun. And then, yeah, the one on the left is sort of just a little bit of a beautiful moment with some different dried arrangements in the wreath room. That was during the spring season. And so you get all of the really pastel colors from the larkspur and amobium and some snapdragons. Actually, that bright yellow is some of our yellow snapdragons that we love to dry.
Wow.
So yeah, it was a fun little moment there.
And in the middle is one of your hand-tied bouquets.
Bridal bouquet, yeah. So that's all dried as well, and I wanted to capture it out in the field, out in the larkspur field. So it's just another example of how amazing those colors can still hold and last in dried flowers as well.
That's so great. All right. And here's just details on how you can follow Hannah at Full Belly Farm and at the Wreath Room, both on Instagram. The Wreath Room is pretty much your account, right, Hannah?
Well, I also have another floral account called Farmer Hands, which
Oh,
is
right.
it's all right. Yeah. So I run all three of these accounts. The Full Belly Farm account, I run for our farm, and it's trying to sort of demonstrate and articulate all of the different things that we grow at our farm. And then the Wreath Room I started a couple of years ago as just sort of a way to, I mean, I just love the Wreath Room, as you can see in my book. But I found that I'm just so drawn to that space and taking photos of that space and sharing what we're doing in that space. And so I created a whole account specifically for that. But I do have my personal more fresh flowers and a bit more of my personal life in at Farmer Hands.
I forgot about that. I am following you there too. All right. Well, we'll add that to our show notes when we post this as our podcast at slowflowerspodcast.com. So you can all find her and dive into more of the beauty of dried flowers and fresh flowers. It looks like there's some questions here, and why don't we let Hannah do a little demo, and then we'll get to the questions in the last 10 minutes of the hour. So keep asking your questions. If Hannah gets to a stopping point, we'll throw them at her. Otherwise, I want to give her a chance to share some of her goodies.
Yeah, first I wanted to just show you, this is a half finished wreath. It's actually one of the wreaths that is in the book, and we shot it 2 years ago. So this has been hanging in our wreath room for
Wow.
about a year and a half. And it still has its amazing colors. And I just wanted to show you that because in terms of sustainability, I feel like dried flowers have always been the go-to, right? Like they last so much longer. You don't have to change them out every couple days in your house. So in my own home, I use bud vases of dried flowers in my guest bedroom or in my, extra bathroom or whatever. And it's just such a great way to incorporate flowers into your home, but not having to change them out. This is how we make all of our wreaths. So it's just actually a 14 gauge baling wire that we use as our base. And then we use a 26 gauge floral wire to wrap all of the flowers onto the base. So this is half finished. And so we use the same baling wire to go around the entire base, and we're going around just once. So you're trying to get that thickness just your first time around.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so fun to sort of experiment with different colors, different patterns. And I just love wreaths. It's what I think I made my first wreath when I was about 4 years old. And my mom proudly displayed it in her home, I think until a couple of years ago. And I've changed it out since then. But I just love them. They're such an amazing way of, demonstrating art form, demonstrating what you can create with dried flowers, and creating something that's so lasting.
Yeah.
Something like this, you can just sort of dust off every once in a while with a little feather duster. Cobwebs are the only sort of thing that you will have to be worried about. But if they're not in direct sunlight, they will last for a really, really long time. If you hang them outside on your door, they'll definitely fade quicker because they're exposed to the elements. But I've also had people that say that they found bird nests that birds that have created a nest on their wreaths on their front doors, and so they can't take them down. They're like, I really want a new Full Belly Farm wreath, but a little bird has made its nest in ours, so I can't take it down. I also know some people that have buried their entire wreath in the fall just to see what comes up in their garden the next year, because you can see there's straw flower and poppy pods and all sorts of fun things, and larkspur that you never know what might pop up. So that's a fun idea as well. So yeah, I don't need to do a full demo, but I can just show you. This is I love using ceramic vases for floral design. Just because with dried flowers, sometimes the stems get a little bit crazy. So I use a ceramic vase that you can't see any of the stems. And then I love a good floral frog. I have a collection of ones that were my grandma, and I love picking them up at flea markets or at vintage stores. And so I just have a little floral frog in the center there. There are so many different amazing dried flowers that we have. We're actually sort of at the end of our dried flower season, and we're just now starting on our fresh flower or our dried flowers for the next season. So in our wreath room right now, there's flax, which I will point out here. We grow a lot of different flax, and we harvest it and dry it at two different stages. We dry it when it's green still. I don't know if I have that here, but and then we also wait for it to become a golden brown, and then we dry it at that stage as well. It's such a wonderful texture, wonderful in wreaths, and also a little bit crazy to use in arrangements just because the stems get a little wild, but I'm going to try to use it today. So I was just cutting it down here, and I'm going to separate it out here.
Okay. I like the fact that you're using them as clumps. You're not putting as individual stems of the flax in, right?
Yeah, and with dried flowers, I end up doing that a lot. I mean, like with wreaths, to get that really rich fullness, I'm putting, instead of putting one piece of larkspur, I'm actually putting three, or lavender. I'm doing the same thing. I'm putting a little bundle of lavender to get that sort of fullness. And so you really see the types of flowers in your wreath, and they really pop out.
Yeah. So how do you feel about us throwing some questions at you while you're doing the design?
That's fine. That's great.
Okay. Tonley, you want to go through some of these questions that people have posted and share them?
Yeah, we've got some really fun ones here. So the first big question is, I know it's not out yet, but remind us, where can we buy the book?
Yeah, so the book is going to be available, hopefully, wherever books are sold. If you have a favorite, local bookstore, you're welcome to go in and tell them they should carry it. But you can go to Penguin Random House, has a list of all of the places that you can buy it. Or just, go to your local bookstore as well. It's out June 4th.
Great.
June 4th, set your calendar.
Great. Excellent.
That's great. Next up, we have a question from Linda. So Linda would like to know, how long can you keep dried flowers until they're no longer viable? So in your mind, like I know you talked about, there's many, many variables out there, but let's say in the perfect circumstances, what is the limit to you when you throw yours out?
Yeah, so we try to use all of our flowers that we dry in 1 year. That's our goal, because we have a really hard time with storage because mice love dried flowers, and so we try to get through our entire all of our flowers, are all of our back stock within 1 year. But if you are doing this at a smaller scale, and you can also, have a little bit more of an eye on all of your dried flowers, I would say that they can last for, I don't know, I pulled something out of our storage container. I think that it had been in there for 2 or 3 years, and it looked beautiful, looked just as good as the day we put it in. So as long as it's away from sun bleaching, they will keep their colors and preserve their colors. Loving them as well.
Yeah. And tell us what you're just adding to the
So this is Nigella. Flax. This is another amazing dried flower. We grow a bunch of different varieties of it. I think this is actually called green pod, but we let it sun bleach, so it's a little bit more of a bleached tone. I'm putting in kind of a more neutral base, and then I'm going to add in my other colors after that.
Great.
Wonderful. So another question I'm seeing here in the chat that I think could be really helpful is, do you have any tips for flowers that are prone to shattering? So an example that Kristen here gives is larkspur, that when she's tried drying like larkspur, it ends up shattering. Do you have any tips on how we can prevent that in our own practice?
Yeah, I brought some examples of things that are pretty shatter prone, because I wanted to give examples of that. So we tried drying tulips this year, and as lovely as they are, they very much shatter. So they're losing sort of constantly if you try drying them. Although we did have some good luck with this purple double tulip this year, so we'll sort of experiment more with that. But I think just catching things at the exact right stage with larkspur, you are going to get some natural shedding. Some flowers are just a little bit more prone to shedding than others, larkspur being one of them. But if you catch it at that right stage where the tips of the flowers are just starting to bloom, but the bottom hasn't started to go to seed yet, you should have the best luck with that. And then as soon as you harvest it, hang it upside down and get it drying, because the longer it sits and waits to get up and dry, the longer it's going to, or the more it's going to sort of break and shatter.
I think that maybe makes me think of the stage of harvest question, which I know you cover in the book, because maybe there's some trick to not waiting too late to cut your fresh flowers for drying.
Exactly. I try to go over all of our harvest techniques for all of the flowers that we dry, because, 40 years later, we're still learning, and it is always an experimentation. But I think just, learning, and experimenting on your own, but also hopefully buying the book and learning a bit more on when we recommend to harvest specific things.
Mm-hmm. It seems like it would be not letting the flower fully open or something like blow out, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So you want to catch it at that perfect moment before it starts to go to seed. And then there's specific things like straw flower that you want to catch before it fully opens, because certain things will continue to open more as you let them dry. So things like crispidia as well, catching them at that perfect moment before they will start to sort of fully open. Yeah.
Yeah, good point. Okay. What are you going to add next?
All right. I'm going to add a bit of this wonderful millet that we grow. So dried flowers, I talk about this in the book, but I like to think about them in different ways. So there's your fillers and your focal flowers, and then your grains and grasses. So your fillers are things that are going to take up a lot of space in your arrangement or your design, and that are going to add a lot of fullness. And then your focal flowers are things like ranunculus or sunflowers, things that have a lot of head to them and will bring your attention into the arrangement. And then grains and grasses are something that's going to add a lot of airiness or whimsicalness to your arrangement as well. So I break down all of the ingredients that we grow into those 3 categories as well. And again, these are all flowers from last season, so they are a little bit more bleached than if I had, done this arrangement in the fall. So just keeping that in mind, that things will begin to fade just slightly.
I think it's just managing people's expectations, right?
Yeah, definitely. And some people really enjoy that more neutral palette, and that's great as well. So these are a snapdragon that we dry. I'm going to add that in.
Oh my gosh, it's so rosy.
Yeah, snapdragons are fun. What we do is oftentimes with things that have broken, the tips have broken off, they're actually perfect for drying. Just because that tip is the ugliest part when you dry them. And so we just cut off the tips of the snapdragons, and then we use them in our dried mixed bouquets or in our wreaths as a really nice sort of, they're great because they're super straight and rigid.
Wow. Tomley, any other questions?
Yes, we have some great questions here. So if you're ready for another one, I love this question from Marion. So Marion, I'm going to give you the opportunity to go on mic if you'd like and ask the question yourself. She would like to know about sort of your pricing practices and how other florists and farmers can be implementing these practices themselves. Marion, are you able to go on mic? There you go.
Sure, hi.
Hi.
Hi, Deborah. I just wanted to say that I've just started to love this whole process of working with dried flowers for so many reasons. I just noticed that the labor is extensive, and especially when I go to arrange the tiny little bundles to make them into a bigger bundle, and it just, it seems like it's I've got to be able to charge more for dried arrangements than for anything fresh. But I just wondered how you figure out your pricing on all that.
Yeah, definitely. It's been tricky, especially because we started 40 years ago and now we're getting into a whole new era of pricing. And trying to, we have customers that have been buying from us for all 40 years, and we sell a lot of our flowers wholesale. So it's really about educating the customer on why prices need to continue to rise as well. And why they can't be 80s or 90s prices anymore. So we try to let folks know that it's not about just the harvesting and the drying, which is a whole thing, but we also try to employ our crew year round and provide them with healthcare. And so really trying to have a moment of educating your customers is the best way that we've found. But also just, you could create a tag that says this was made with love and these are the steps that went into it, or say something about, this wreath was actually started back in the fall when I planted these flowers, and then we, harvested them and hung them, and this is how much sort of labor actually went into it. And then also knowing your limitations too. So if your customers are not willing to pay those prices, maybe you shift or change what you offer to do something that's a little bit more within those price ranges. So bud vases with dried flowers is a great alternative. Maybe you're not creating full wreaths, maybe you're creating half wreaths or mini wreaths. There's a lot of ways to sort of work with your customer base as well, to sort of fit within their needs as well. We're in a really rural area, and our local customers are not always the folks that are able to buy our wreaths at the price that they're at. So we offer dried mixed bouquets as a way, that those local customers may feel like they are a part of our dried flower program, but don't have to spend $80 or $90 or more for a wreath.
That's helpful. What can you talk a little bit, just to play on that a little bit, between the retail and the wholesale? Are you primarily wholesaling to other florists or at the San Francisco Flower Market? How are you moving your flowers?
Yeah, so our dried flowers, are you talking specifically dried flowers or?
Dried, yeah.
So our dried flowers go to a couple of different spots. They are going to wholesale to stores in Sacramento and the Bay Area. A lot of small stores like our Natural Food Co-op and different folks that have been customers for a really long time and just love our flowers. And then we also sell to our farmers markets, and that's where we sell probably about half of our wreaths is at those 3 farmers markets that we attend. And then we also sell our wreaths and our dried mixed bouquets as add-ons to our CSA. So we have a CSA subscription of veggies and flowers, and so folks in the fall can get an add-on of wreaths and dried bouquets there.
It's nice to have those different outlets. So not so much direct to florists.
We're not selling too many direct to florists. We just had this amazing customer base for 40 years, and we haven't reached out too much to local florists. And also, I know a lot of smaller farms that are working directly with florists, and we didn't want to step on toes and interfere with that or create competition. So we got our market that we feel really comfortable with, and we're not trying to step into other folks' market as much. For sunflowers, not all sunflowers dry well, but we found a couple of different varieties that dry well. We grow a lot of Vincent's Choice. This isn't actually Vincent's Choice. I think this is something called Vincent Select, but they dry really well, and we've had a lot of luck with them. Some folks that are in sort of more humid climates might have a harder time with them just because they do take quite a long time to dry. But the Vincent's Choice is a smaller head, and the petals are very compact. And so it seems like we've had a pretty good run at drying these.
Gorgeous. I'll jump in with a question from Patty. Do you sell fresh flowers? Oh, yes, of course, we know you sell fresh flowers. So she wants to know, how do you decide what will be processed fresh versus what is processed dried? That's a good question for people who are doing both. So we kind of think of our dried flowers as 2 different things. I was
explaining to Deborah before you all hopped on that we do some what I call dryaling, which is trial drying. So of course we're always trying new things and experimenting, but we grow things specifically for drying, and then we dry things that we're already growing for fresh cut flowers. So those are kind of the two mindsets that we have when we're thinking about our dried flowers. So if you're a gardener or a small grower, you might be thinking about things that you already have in your garden that you're going to want to dry. So if you're growing statice already, that's a great dried flower, and you might not need to grow more of it. But we grow things specifically for drying, like crispidia, amobium, straw flower. We're almost specifically harvesting just for drying. There's things that just don't hold up quite as well in a fresh mixed bouquet that we're just going straight into the wreath room. Nigella is a great example of something that we harvest when it's in flower as a fresh flower, and then we let about half the field go to dry, to seed, and then we dry that as well.
That's great. So are you trying to cut those stems really short so that the sunflowers are nesting down into that textural base?
There's a few that might be up higher, but I'm trying to sort of create this nest that things are going to. I don't know if you all can see this, but
yes,
I'm
it's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. Diane just jumped in and said she came in about 10 minutes late, so she's not quite sure if we covered this, but what direction do you give people? What directions do you give people who receive your bouquets? So customers who are buying the mixed bouquets, I guess the wreaths as well. What care instructions do you give them?
Yeah, so all of our wreaths come with a label that actually says who the wreath was made by, because it is such a, a small batch sort of artist creation. So we want to give credit where credit is due. So all of our wreaths come with a tag that says this was created by, and then the name of the woman that made it. And that's a really nice way to sort of give recognition. And then also, like I was saying, about half of our wreaths are sold at the farmers market. So a lot of it is just letting folks know that this will last longer if you keep it inside, away from direct sunlight. And I try to, let folks know on the Wreath Room Instagram page as well. And in the book as well, I have a whole caring for your wreath section.
I love it. Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's such a, it can be such a variable to how long your purchase item lasts if you are having it out on a porch where it's exposed to moisture and all of that. So
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious. I know that for me as a farmer, I do a lot of cutting because it's a way to encourage more blooms to happen, right? So do you find, are there particular varieties that are more challenging to you to get the plant to develop enough to become a dried flower plant, if that makes sense? Or are there certain plants where you're like, I have to use this as a fresh flower enough times to get it to a point that it's cost effective to use as a dried flower?
Like amobium is maybe an example of that. I'm just trying to think, like, oftentimes that first flush is a lot taller, and so we'll harvest it for drying or for dried mixed bouquets, and then that second flush might be a little bit shorter, and then we'll use that for drying. And same with crispidia. Any of the like wonky stems, those go specifically to dried, and then those straight stems, the ones that are really nice and full, those are going to be going to our mixed bouquets. So yeah, we definitely do a bit of sorting out in the field. Again, with the statice, we dry a lot of statice. Any of the shorter stems that we can't use for orders or for mixed bouquets, those are the ones that we're drying. So we kind of consider it a value-added product in a lot of ways, because we are taking something that may not have been harvested out in the field and giving it a new life.
That's a good consider. I think it just goes back to the more familiar you are with what you're growing and the more seasons that you've got under your belt, you kind of just automatically know when you look at something.
Definitely. And even things like mixed bouquets that come back from farmers markets, we started drying those as well, because a lot of our ingredients that we use in mixed bouquets in the summer or in the late spring are things that dry really well. And so to have a second life for those those mixed bouquets that might have come back from the market and otherwise been wasted or gifted away, we actually just hang dry them and then we'll reuse them as dried mixed bouquets.
Okay, well, that's good to know. And that kind of leads to this last question or question that Marianne just posted. Tonley, you okay if I post that? Okay. Do you dry everything upside down? And do you ever use mesh frames to dry them vertically right side up? I never thought about that.
Yeah, I know folks that dry, so we don't grow dahlias and we don't dry a lot of roses, but things like dahlias or zinnias, and even sunflowers, I know folks that do a mesh frame and then stick the flowers into the mesh frame. And so the heads are upright and are drying so that they get the most full and the most open. We don't do that, one, because we don't have a lot of space to do it. But I think if you're doing it at a smaller scale and you're really wanting those really, very open zinnias or dahlias, that might be a great way to go. We just don't do it here. Yeah.
I think we cut you off when you were telling us what you're adding now.
Oh yeah, so this is ranunculus. This is one of those lovely sort of colors, rich colors that I just love with the ranunculus and this is another thing that, these stems were too short, we couldn't sell them, and so we hang dried them, and now we're using them, and we'll be using them in wreaths and mixed bouquets.
That color, it's almost like amethyst or something. It's so ruby, gorgeous. Now, you would not sell this because your valuable flower frog is in the base.
Yeah. I mean, you could do it without it, or you could add a sort of a textural element at the bottom. Something like flax stems would be a great way to sort of keep those flowers in place. But dried flowers are also great because they do take up quite a lot of space just naturally. And so you may not need a floral frog, but I like to use them just because it gets the arrangement going in the direction that you want.
Yeah, very good. Yeah. Well, I guess you could use chicken wire too, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Hannah, are you doing wedding designs anymore? I know you've done a lot of private customers who come to you for weddings.
Yeah, so I was doing a lot of weddings, and then with COVID, I sort of stopped, or the wedding industry shut down in a lot of respects. And so I sort of shifted my role here at Full Belly Farm during that time. And it was great. I was getting really burnt out on weddings and the wedding design world. And so I'm now doing more of the harvesting and day-to-day operations in our field and in our shop. But I do still arrange for 6 weddings here at the farm. We have a wedding venue. And so I'm arranging for those weddings every season. And I just love it because the folks that get married here are really they understand and appreciate the seasonality of our flowers. And so I'm not buying in any flowers. I'm just using what we have here. And for the sustainability of my own life and also for the flowers, it's been a really wonderful change.
That's beautiful. So it sounds like Full Belly is made a decision to basically be a wedding venue, but only for 6 weddings a year. And if you want to get married at Full Belly, you get Hannah as part of the package.
Yeah, we do a full service. My brother and his wife have a catering company that use our food and our veggies that are grown here. So we have a sort of a full service package, which is wonderful.
Oh my gosh, that's great. I want to look into that. That'd be a great story to have all the food or most of the food and all the flowers come from the place where you're married. I mean, what's more slow than that? That's awesome.
So I'm adding in a bit of, this is the sea oat grass, and it's just lovely. This actually comes from my mom's garden, and I steal it every season because I just love it.
What I am so impressed with is that you have probably got 90 stems in that 6-inch vase. You're cramming in a lot of gorgeous material.
I think I'm just going to add a few more things. With some white straw flower that's beautiful. And then I think I might call it good. Maybe add a few tulips, but yeah, it's fun. I mean, I haven't arranged a vase well talking to folks on the internet before, so
also away from you.
Yes, it's a little bit tricky.
Not a lazy Susan. Anything else you want to add that we haven't brought up yet? I think we've touched on most of the questions that people have shared in the chat.
Yeah, I host 2 wreath classes every year, and I'm actually going to be hosting more this year at our farm, and where you get to learn how to make a wreath. You get all of the flowers, and you get a amazing tutorial by me and my mom. And so if you're interested in coming out, we love visitors. We, would love to have you out. We also have farm dinners and pizza dinners at our farm, where we invite folks to come and explore the farm and get to know the farm. So if you're ever in the area, please come join us.
And those are probably posted at Full Belly Farms website under events or something like that.
It is, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. I love it. Well, what are you going to do with all the time you will have gotten back in your life from not having to work on a book?
Oh my gosh, I'm very excited. I'm a little bit excited to just have a moment of not worrying about promoting and also not worrying about writing. But it was such an amazing process, and I'm really, really proud of the stories that I tell, and I just hope that it's instructional and inspirational for all of you as well. So please consider buying it, and if you do buy it, please tag me and take a photo of it, because I would love to share it around the world. So thank you so much.
I love it. I think people need to tag you when they make something that was inspired by your book, so you can see how, how these flowers are, it's the artistic part. Everybody interprets them differently. So that's the exciting part.
Yeah, and if you start drying flowers in your own life, and you haven't before, and you have questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm always happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This has been such a special moment of inspiration for me, and I'm so glad we had so many participants. We will edit this and share it next week as part of our online podcast resources for people. So I'll add some of your other resources that you mentioned to our show notes. And we'll do a drawing early next week, and somebody will find out from us that they've received a copy courtesy of Hannah's publisher. So thank you for that. And we are going to have one more Slow Flowers member meetup between now and our summer break, and that will be June 14th. And I'm really excited to confirm that it will be our pre-Slow Flowers Summit meetup with Melanie Harrington of Dahlia May Flower Farm and Janice Harris of Harris Flower Farm, 2 of our farmer-florist speakers at the summit. They're going to give you a little preview to their presentations, and getting people excited about coming to Banff to hear them in person. So if you can't hear them in person, this will be your little micro mini session, and it'll be really fun. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. I thank you so much, Hannah, for
thank you so much.
Oh, you bet. And congratulations on your almost pub date. It's coming right up. And I hope you have a great book launch party. I don't know what you're going to do, but
yeah, it'll be great.
Make the world's largest wreath or something like that. Okay, we'll talk soon. Hannah, thank you so much. And thank you everyone for coming today. This has been really special. And I just think it's fun when we can showcase our members and what they're doing and get it out into the wider community for us all to borrow some of her inspiration. So thanks, Hannah. Take care. Bye-bye.